Hey YouTubers, a while back I did a video entitled Answers to What I'm Catching Trout and Redfish On. And while I went through the lures that I use mainly, I didn't go into a lot of detail about the presentation of those lures. And since that time I've had quite a few questions and requests to go through and show exactly how I use these lures and how I present them. So I'm going to do this video and go through the basic lures that I use the most and how I use them. We'll start off with this homemade job that you've seen me catch a lot of redfish on. And this lure is really versatile for trout and redfish, but the way you use it for the two is entirely different. For redfish, you want this lure traveling at a steady speed on top, making a wake. And so half this lure is going to be out of the water, and it's just going to be a steady like this. And the trick to catching redfish on it is to never stop it. Almost 9 out of 10 times a redfish won't just blow up on this lure. First thing he'll do is drop in behind it. And when you're fishing real shallow like I do, you're going to see the wake, if not see the fish. A lot of times with the water clarity as it is now, you'll see the fish. But once he drops in behind this, I've had a lot of guys out there and letting them use one of these lures that I built, and invariably the first instinct is to stop the lure. And as soon as you do that, that redfish will turn off and he's gone. He ain't coming back. And if they're a little bit aggressive, he's going to run up there and he's going to grab it. But you got to keep it moving. And the other trick is not to pull the trigger setting the hook until you feel him. Because I've had them hit it. The record is 9 times. I had one hit 9 times before he actually got the lure. Redfish are not built to take stuff off the top, so sometimes they get a little clumsy, especially if the water's cold and they're a little bit, it throws them off a little bit. But that's the key, is to keep it moving and keep it on top and keep it making a wake. Now for trout, a whole different animal. They don't like something that's just moving steady. For trout, you want to drag it a little, stop it, drag it quicker, stop it, jerk it, twitch it, and majority of the time they'll get after it, but they'll hit it when it stops. That's just the basic. That's in a trout's makeup. You can, I'm not saying you can't, but you can catch them dragging it for redfish. But a lot of times when you're dragging it for redfish, you'll see a trout flash added over and under it, and then he just loses interest. But sometimes they'll grab it too. But that's the key, is just on redfish, a steady retrieve. That's why spoons are so good for redfish, because the spoon doesn't do anything but this, And for some reason, their mental makeup, that's what they like. So that pretty much covers that. And that covers just about any crankbait. This crankbait right here works real good. It's a waker. And same thing. Redfish, slow and steady. Some days you got to speed it up a little bit, slow it down a little bit, but it's always the same. You're always cranking at a steady pace. This, man, I can't even tell you how many trout I've caught on these since they came out, but this is a a slow sinking twitch bait. It's not really suspending. I call it a suspending twitch bait because it will go to the bottom, but it's a slow sink. And this thing, you want a real erratic twitch, stop, twitch, you know, change it up. Every time you twitch it, this thing will change directions, and it rolls also, so you get the flash from the mirror inside, and it's deadly. But you can't really, there's really no set way to work these as long as you're not just throwing them out and dragging them in. You just kind of got to feel it out, change up your cadence and how fast you twitch it and blah blah blah. But any type of erratic movement with this will draw strikes from trout and redfish, and that goes for any of the suspending, slow sinking twitch baits like Paul Brown's and all that other stuff. You want to do that, just be erratic with it, and that works the best. Stick baits. I didn't talk about these last time, but if you can see this stick bait, it's got a lot of bite marks on it. Some days, if they get real finicky, you can catch them on this, because this sets in the water like that. I mean, the water level is going to be right there. And for some reason, it makes it easy for a redfish to get when they're hanging like that, because he can come from below. And sometimes a small bait that's partially submerged, and then of course you twitch it and twitch it and twitch it, they like it. I don't know why. But like I said, you should have some of these in your box for days when they're running at your other lures, and sometimes you can convince them to go on this one. Of course, I showed this. This is my setup for these cocohos that you see me catch all these trout on. And you can see this one's all chewed to pieces. This is the one I used in the next to the last video when I went out and caught those trout when it was high pressure and sunny day, and it's pretty much mangled up and chewed up. But anyway, this is a 30-pound fluorocarbon leader loop knot. That's real important, because the loop knot allows the bait a lot more action than if you just tied a Palomar or a clinch knot or something to the head. That restricts how much it can move. But this lure, I don't use real shallow, and I use it mainly for trout, and that's usually in a little bit deeper water. But this lure, you want to throw it, let it sink, and then you want to jump it, let it fall, and then jump it a couple of times, let it fall, and change that back and forth. The cadence, it doesn't really matter too much. You have to vary on days when it's real cold and they're sluggish. But any kind of erratic movement. But the key to catching them on these is to make sure that it jumps pretty high and then letting it fall. Because for some reason, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to hit it when it's falling. And depending on where they're at, you know, like a lot of the fishing I do with this is in 3 or 4 feet of water. And like that video before last where I caught those trout, it had been really cold, and they were down close to the bottom. So I was letting it go all the way to the bottom, and I was jumping it, let it go back to the bottom, and jumping it. But some days they'll be up, you know, midway or closer to the top, and then you want to just kind of swim it and let it do that up and down action. And I've been asked about why I use this barrel swivel and this. I use a 30-pound leader on these because so often trout will completely swallow this lure. And you need something tough because they do have teeth. And but 30 pound, if you put 30 pound on a lure like this, or a lure like this, or one like this, and you don't get as good action from the lure because of this. You know, this is kind of stiff and coarse. So what I do is I just do this. This swivels so far away from the bait, they're not going to notice it anyway, especially with the fluorocarbon. And it allows me to put a snap on my main line, and if I want to get off this bait and go to this bait or any other type of bait that doesn't need a 30 pound leader, then it allows me to change real quick and without having to retie and do all right knots and all that stuff. It's just a convenience, and it works well. I've never had any trouble catching fish. Like I said, that thing's so far away, it's not like they're going to notice it anyway. I've had questions about the twister tails, which I use is the 10 centimeter gulp swimming mullet. And I just went to my tackle box and found out that the package is empty. So, but this is basically the same thing. This is a Berkeley power bait twister tail, and the key to these baits, these twister tail baits, is a small jig head, because I'm throwing this in shallow water. I mean, I'm throwing it in like this tops. So depending on the tide, and some days it'll be a little bit deeper or something, but I'll use that's a 1/16. This is a 1/8, which most of the time I'm going to use this one with those baits, because it gives me the right rate of fall. And you're not this bait, you're doing more of a swimming action. You're going to be dragging it up and letting it fall a little bit, but you're going to be moving it like this. And with this tail spinning, it gives it some lift like an airplane. So it's easy to keep. You can't let this go to the bottom in redfish country when you're fishing this deep because of the grass. It'll just end up getting hung. So you want to do is swim it above the grass, bring it up close to the top, let it drop, bring it up close to the top, let it drop, and change it up. Normally, it's not real critical as long as you keep it out of the grass and don't crank it 100 miles an hour. You want to work it slow as you can and keep it swimming, which with this tail it's not hard to do, because like I said, it gives it some lift, and so it's easy to keep it out of the grass. And of course, different weather conditions, tide conditions, everything. Some days you'll have to pull a little faster, some days a little slower, but that's with every lure and whatever you're doing. Just depends on the mood of the fish that day, but it's not hard to figure out. But anyway, like I said, that's the key. The key is a light jig head when you're fishing these up in real shallow water. Spinnerbaits. I want to talk about that a little bit. I've caught a bunch of fish on spinnerbaits in the last few videos, and there's a big difference and a critical difference in spinnerbaits when it comes to redfish. And I'm going to show you the difference right here. First of all, my spinnerbait setup is the same as my Cocoa jig. I use a heavy leader and a barrel swivel so I can change that quickly. But here's the key difference. Now, this is a bass spinnerbait, and I've heard a lot of people talk about trying to catch redfish with a bass spinnerbait, and it can be done. But I tried it before I knew about this other stuff. Now the key is, you see where that hook is? You see where that spinner is? That spinner is right on top of that hook. And for bass, it's not a problem. Bass got a great big mouth, and he's going to come in and he's going to take everything. And he's built for taking stuff like that. But redfish, mouth on bottom, they're not designed really to get stuff off the top or to inhale stuff like that. So here's a spinnerbait that's made for redfish. Now you see a key difference here. See how long this arm is? Now look where the blade is in comparison to the hook. That blade's way away from that hook. And that's why these catch redfish good on a consistent basis. Because this is going to get his attention. He's going to feel the vibration, maybe see the flash. But when he runs up on this bait, he's not going to go for that spinner. He's going to go for this, what's hanging behind here. And for a redfish, without this being in the way, it makes it a lot easier for him to bear down on this and grab it. And the hookup with this spinnerbait, which is designed for redfish, is way better than a bass spinnerbait where you got the blade and the hook together. This is a redfish magic. I don't know, there's probably other people that build spinnerbaits for redfish, but this is my favorite. Excuse me. And this is not the trailer that came with it. The trailer that came with it was a swimming mullet type paddle tail bait, and it works good, but it got tore up. And I put this Berkeley, this power bait twister tail on there, which works great too. So on these spinnerbaits also, there's not a lot you can do with a spinnerbait as far as action, because it's all pretty much built in. It's basically dragging it through the water and letting the spinner do the work. Of course, you got to mess around with speed. Some days they want it faster or slower or whatever. But I will pump the rod a little bit sometimes, and when you do that, it changes the vibration of the blade from a thump 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 to a rapid, you know, and a lot of times that'll trigger a strike. If one falls in behind it and it's just eyeballing it and acts like he doesn't want to eat it, a lot of times you can speed it up, run it up close to the top, or slow it down, let it go to the bottom. But basically, it's a throw it out there and reel it in lure, which is great. It makes it easy to fish, and it's really hard to mess it up. So that's about it on spinnerbait. I love them. They're easy to fish. I wanted to address some questions I had about when I release fish. I've had people ask me, because you'll see me giving them a little toss. I found out a long time ago that easing them back into the water, especially redfish, trout too, it's worse in the summertime than wintertime, but they build up some kind of acid in their body when you're fighting them, and I can't remember the name of it. I've heard biologists talk about it, but they will actually go into shock. And years ago, I used to ease them in the water, and a lot of times I had to go back because they would just roll belly up. They weren't dead, but I would have to go back and prod them, hit them with a pole, do something. And if you do like I do, if you lob them into the water, when they hit the water, it's the same as the offshore guys taking big fish and throwing them head first. It brings them out of that shock like that. And as soon as they hit the water, it just, you know, it brings them out of it, and they swim off. that's the reason I do it. It looks kind of it looks kind of rough, but it's much better for the fish. Now, a really big trout or a really big redfish, I won't do that just because of the size and weight of the fish. I'll put them in the water and move them back and forth, hold them by the tail to make sure that they're revived. But on small, medium fish, if you give them a little toss and let them hit that water, snaps them right out of that little shocky stuff that they go through, and they normally just take off like a bullet. So anyway, that's the answer to the question about how I release fish. And then in that last video, you saw me catch that big old trout, and this is the lure that I caught him on. The sound of this is the trout really like it. I catch a lot of redfish on it too, but some days when trout are a little bit finicky or laying around, sometimes you can entice them with this sound. And this is set up for bad grass situations. And this is a walk the dog bait, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you got to vary the speed. In the wintertime when the water gets cold, you got to work this pretty slow. And they'll ease up to it a lot of times and just do a little sucking motion and take it down. Unlike spring and summer where they just blow up and tear it up. But yeah, that works good in the wintertime. Most people don't realize that you can still catch them when the water's cold. You just have to change up your delivery a little bit. So anyway, I hope that answers the questions about how I'm using these baits and the presentation. And I hope everybody has good luck fishing. Catch a lot of fish and get out there and fish, man. There's nothing like it. Nothing like being in the outdoors. Thanks a lot. I want to thank my subscribers too. Y'all have been great support, and I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Redfish Ross out.